Hello and welcome to episode number 54 of Gar Borras' Time Machine. Gar, we're continuing our holiday themed set of shows for this year, and the latest one we're going to be doing today is The Wizard of Oz. Now, what's interesting about this, Gar, straight off, which you and I talked a little bit about when we discussed doing today's episode, was it's not really a Thanksgiving or Christmas movie or anything, but we consider it kind of a holiday tradition for the simple fact you and me and a lot of people in our lifetime, it always seems to be aired around Thanksgiving time every year. So that's why we're including this, and it's a great film. I watched it again for the first time in years, Gar, and man, it took me back to my my childhood when I saw it for the first time. Let's talk about, now I know the movie originally came out in 1939, which is way before either you and I are on planet Earth, but what do you remember your very first time you saw this movie?
I honestly, I don't remember the first time that I watched the movie because I think I was just so young.
Okay.
But it was a highly prevalent movie in my childhood because virtually every year at about the same time of the year, it would reappear on TV.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah.
And of course, every time that it would reappear, it was a big deal. Everybody knew about it, so everybody was tuning into it. TV back in those days was very different.
Oh, sure.
It was the only form of home entertainment.
Yeah, very.
Besides listening to the radio.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And see, nowadays it's hard for people to really understand this because there is so much more diversity in home entertainment.
Sure.
There's a gazillion things, but back in those days, home entertainment only really existed of either listening to music on the radio or listening to the radio or watching TV. So when Wizard of Oz was being broadcast, it was always a once-a-year thing.
Sure. Yeah.
And, of course, it really didn't take much for the word to get out. And virtually every year I remember that I knew that it was coming on, and there was an anticipation that used to happen, because I knew that, they're going to broadcast it on TV, and there was an anticipation.
Oh, sure, and
that went on, and it's so much different than now. I mean, I'm not saying that anticipation doesn't exist, but anticipation is so much overused now that people don't even pay attention to the anticipation part of it.
Yeah, I'll give you a great example of what you're talking about. I mean, a lot of what you're talking about, it comes down to family tradition. I mean, like you're saying, when I was a kid too, I remember around November sometime, especially around Thanksgiving, usually is when they would air it on TV. And so there'd be this thing about the family planning on what they're going to watch that night. Oh, okay, we're all gonna eat dinner around the TV today. We're gonna watch The Wizard of Oz, or we're gonna have dinner time so we can watch The Wizard of Oz. People used to plan their days on what they were going to watch based on what was watched on TV. And you're very much correct, Gar, in that TV was one of the few forms of entertainment people had back in the days. I mean, let's think about, as I said, this movie came out in 1939 before you and I were either one of us was alive. And so go back to 1939, okay? I was researching this. The President of the United States, just to give people kind of some aspect on the time, Franklin Delano Roosevelt was the President of the United States, okay? And this is, 10 years before the Great Depression. So this is when we're talking, and very much like you said, even when I was watching the movie last night to prep for today's episode, I didn't watch it on TV. I was able to pull out my my DVD. I could put the movie on any time I want. I was able to plan. Okay, Saturday night the night before we do the show, I'm going to watch the movie, so it's fresh in my head. Got the ability to do that. So you're very much right. There's not that anticipation. You can watch the movie anytime you want to if you got it on DVD or video cassette or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, and anticipation was a really big part. Back in those days, just like a TV show.
Sure.
If you had a favorite TV show, the episodes would be once a week.
Sure.
So you would watch the episode, and of course they would end the episode, and then now you have a week of anticipation building up to being able to watch the next episode.
Yeah.
And this was all a big deal to everyone back in those days. It was also, a huge factor in what created what we call the water cooler conversation.
Sure. Yeah.
Because that it was what was a huge part of water cooler conversation was the anticipation of. It was either the anticipation of or the rehashing of something else that had been watched, and now you're kind of revisiting it with your friend in this conversation.
Oh, sure.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, it was very different. These things don't exist nowadays because it's a cornucopia.
Yeah.
Everywhere you go, there's a million choices.
Sure.
There is no anticipation anymore. It's just like everybody's vying for your attention. Here, watch me. Kind of like going to the video store and picking out a movie. How they made the outer covers of the boxes attention getters.
Oh, not only that, Gar.
What I mean? So we're, I don't want to really get off topic about it, but it was a really prevalent part of what made The Wizard of Oz so special, because you literally had to wait a year to see it again.
Yeah. And just going back to 1939, what the world was like, Gar, I mean, in some of our past episodes we've done like on movies from the 1930s that came before us, like Frankenstein, Dracula. These were those classic horror films, but they're very different if you look from like what movies look like from 1931, when the original Frankenstein came out. They were blacking out. They black and white movies. There wasn't a lot of dialogue. And then even we done an episode a couple weeks back on Abbott and Costello meets Frankenstein. And even from the time between those movies, there was now a lot more dialogue in the movie. It was still black and white, but now in today's episode we're talking about The Wizard of Oz. And one thing I kind of noticed as I'm watching the film last night, and I'm kind of noticing it accidentally, I'm not really paying attention, but the movie starts out in black and white, and then gradually, very gradually as you're watching it, color starts to come into it.
Well, my interpretation was they used black and white as representing her being awake.
Yeah.
And with all of the people, the real world,
Sure.
All of the characters as the people that they were in her life as ranch hands and things like that. And the color represented the dream. Sure. Which was, and to me, that's really a critical part of the movie.
Yeah.
Because it does, without ever saying anything or doing anything, it's very easy for a mind to mentally digest. Oh, okay. Now she's back in the real world. So at the end of the movie, now she's back in black and white.
Yeah. See, that's what
you see what I mean?
I dug that. Yeah.
So that's that was honestly, I think that was a strike of genius. But there are a bunch of elements to this movie that are strokes of genius.
Sure. I mean, just the color. I mean, it kind of like you could almost miss it. It's one of these films. You're so into the film, if you're not really paying attention, because the color gradually comes in. But of course, once she comes out of her little dream sequence, and she meets her friends along the way, and they're on the way to find the wizard. The color gets a lot more brighter, and I was reading that the art department for MGM Studios, they spent a week on deciding what shade of yellow they were going to use for the yellow brick road. I mean, it took a week to make that decision.
Well, yeah, because when they first started trying yellows, by the time you watched it on film, the yellow looked green.
Yeah.
And that was a prevalent thing in the past too. That is another one of those things that people really don't know that much about.
Mm-hmm.
For me, as a musician, there is a very popular retro color of guitar.
Okay.
And the name of that color is called TV yellow.
Ah, there you go.
And you can go out today and still find guitars listed in what they call TV yellow. Well, the truth of the matter is the reason why they came up with that color for the guitar is when somebody appeared on TV playing a guitar, and if the guitar was white,
white balance?
The technology that was available at that time, the white guitar would be washed out, and you wouldn't even be able to tell it was a guitar.
See?
It would create lines in the screen.
Wow.
It was just, it was not working. So what they did is they experimented just like they did in The Wizard of Oz, and they found that if they used this particular type of yellow,
mm-hmm.
that on TV it looks white.
Yeah, and
every time you look at black and white footage and you see a guy playing a white guitar, that white guitar is actually TV yellow.
Wow, I never knew that.
Yes.
I love.
That's the same thing that happened with The Wizard of Oz when they were trying to create the yellow brick road. They were trying variations, but then they would look at the footage, to test it out to see what it looks like, and it wouldn't look yellow, or it wasn't an appealing yellow.
Yeah.
Of course, what you're going for when you're making the movie is a
bright,
luminescent level yellow.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Something that stands out, you know what I mean? Because this is Oz.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So they had to experiment to come up with the right yellow that would actually appear on film that way. And it took them a week to do that.
Oh, wow. I love learning this stuff, Gar. And interestingly enough, this film was based on, get this, the children's book from 1900, of course, children's novel, The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, by L. Frank Baum. It was the first book of 14 of these books. Now, I don't know why they never made other movies based on the other books, but so the book itself that the film is based on goes all the way back to 1900. So it would take them 39 years to get a movie based on the book. Can you believe that?
Well, things moved at a
slow pace then. Yeah.
All advancements in technology, all of that stuff in that time period was happening at so much slower pace, and that has a lot to do with it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, Gar.
It would be, honestly, it would be a natural progression for that time period. It wouldn't be out of the normal.
I mean, Gar.
When you look at it out of context in comparing it to now,
sure,
it's just everything technology is advancing at lightning speed, and now that you introduced AI to technology, now it's going to advance at an even faster rate, and that is very scary.
I never thought about that, Gar, but when you said that, this rolled in my mind. 1939. I mean, this is the days of the mail being sent by covered wagon. Messages being sent through carrier pigeon and stuff like that, because they did not have a telephone, did not have computers back then. It was a much slower world. You are so right, and that's why, like, before they even had TV or movies. I mean, can you imagine how exciting it was to have a radio and be able to broadcast stuff on a radio and go home and listen to music or a newscast? How exciting!
Well, can you imagine the anticipation?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And really, in my younger years, anticipation was a tool. Mm-hmm. That advertisers used to get people excited, and the longer that anticipation, the longer people have to wait, the more it builds up, and advertisers knew about the psychology of this, mm-hmm. And they used to use this to the hilt back in the day. Which nowadays, anticipation it's almost non-existent anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, it still exists, but nowhere near the degree that it used to be used in very, very different times.
Oh, sure, and it was actually, another thing I love about doing these episodes, Gar, with you is we find stuff out that we didn't even know, and it kind of shows you kind of a transformation of, like, the entertainment industry. Like, it was actually a Walt Disney film that had a lot to do with this film even being made, because I was reading in 1937, it was a Walt Disney film, the original version of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, that they finally were able to kind of realize, okay, you could be successful having a movie that is based on a child's story, on a fantasy, and they saw how successful Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs were, and then that was the time when, around the following year, 1938, when MGM decided to buy the rights to make the Wizard of Oz. So just think, if Walt Disney had never done Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, this film might have never been made.
Well, up until Walt Disney made Snow White,
very.
Fantasy movies had a very long track record of not being successful.
Yeah.
And it was, Snow White was the one that kind of broke the dam.
Yeah.
And, you know what I mean? So a lot of people, then again, because it's in the past, a lot of these angles that existed back then, a lot of people don't know about. But yeah, at that time, fantasy movies had a very strong track record of not being successful. But then now you have the success of Snow White. Now it opens the doors
for other things,
all of the other ones to follow, and you would not have Wizard of Oz had it not been for the success of Snow White, and it's very true.
And it's funny that MGM saw the success Walt Disney had with Snow White, and they were the ones that, okay, you know what, they were successful with that. Now we're going to try a film like that, and I'm willing to bet once The Wizard of Oz came out and was successful, other studios probably started to say, okay, Walt Disney did it, MGM's done it, now we're going to do a film like that.
Yes, yes. And you have, the Wizard of Oz, when it first came out in the theaters, it basically just broke even. It really didn't make a
splash, a huge splash. Yeah.
Well, yeah, it didn't explode in popularity until later on, where it started becoming that TV tradition.
In fact, and we're going to get into that in a little bit. Before we do, Gar, but just so people know the time frame we're talking again, 1939. The release date for the film originally was August 25th, 1939. It was directed, of course, by Victor Fleming, who also, following the success of The Wizard of Oz, would go on to direct Gone with the Wind. So quite a successful director here.
Well, the only thing that I read about the director, that I didn't like was when Judy Garland had a scene where she was slapping.
Oh yes, I heard
one of the characters. Yeah. She kept giggling, and the director took her to the side and then slapped her.
Yeah, I read about that.
And then she turned around and did it in one take.
Yeah. Oh, okay, Gar. Yeah.
That is stepping over the line by my standards.
Yeah, I agree. And again, they would have been called out. They would probably been sued. The guy would have probably been fired these days. Very, very different world back then. Also, what you're talking about, Gar, I read the same thing. Now again, going back to kind of the history of this film, originally it's released in 1939. The original book it is based on came out in 1900, so quite a history this film has had. It's celebrating like its 84th anniversary as we sit here this year. But it said in 1956, that's several years after the film was originally released, 1956, the TV broadcast premiere of A Wizard of Oz reintroduced the film to the public on CBS for the first time since the film was first released in 1939. And that's very important, Gar, because, again, at the time, in the 1930s, people don't have DVD players, they don't have video recorders, so the only way you can see this movie is in the theaters. And like so often, once, it runs its course in the theater, you really didn't get a chance to see it until, for the first time in 1956, they say, okay, we bought the rights to The Wizard of Oz. We're going to broadcast it on CBS, and we're going to reintroduce this film to people that either forgot about it or even maybe never were aware of the film, never even seen it. So a whole new generation or two are being reintroduced to the film, and that has a big deal. That's a very big deal because like people like you, me, Gar, that weren't even alive in 1939. We're aware of the film because CBS bought the rights to the TV, and it's become part of our family fabric, our family tradition every year because they reintroduce this thing on TV.
Well, and I am that generation that you're talking about. That they when they wound up doing that, it wound up affecting people like me, and I am of that age group. But, there was another thing that you brought up before, that it took many, many years for the book to become
a film.
A film. But the truth of the matter is there are several silent film versions of The Wizard of Oz.
Oh, I'm not aware of that.
That were released.
Wow.
And, when I was doing the research, just to see how far technology or films have advanced.
Yeah.
It would really, the person that wrote down the information was suggesting that you go back and actually watch those silent film versions of because they do lean on the side of creepy.
Oh wow, interesting. Wow. So
Yes,
more on the creepy than the
less on the ooh and the ah with the fantasy, and much more on the side of the creepy. And the truth of the matter is a lot of children's stories that used to be popular when I was a kid growing up, that we used to learn how to sing, Ring Around the Rosie, Pocket Full of Posies.
Yeah, I remember
all of those type of children's songs.
Yeah.
All of those songs are actually based on really horrific historical events.
Wow.
Horrific.
Amazing.
I mean, with the emphasis on horrific. They're not just historic events. The emphasis is on horrific
Wow.
historic events. And if you look back into those stories about those songs, you'll find out what I'm talking about.
Well, that's very interesting.
Just like that is what kind of it just seems to be the influence of fantasy before fantasy became what it was when Wizard of Oz came out. Fantasy previous to that, and that probably has a lot to do with why fantasy was never successful, is because fantasy was
creepy.
Very creepy.
Wow.
It was not appealing. It was not the ooh and ah fantasy that it had become by the time Wizard of Oz was released.
You have piqued my interest, buddy. I got to go back and see if I can find any clips of silent era Wizard of Oz. I mean, I would just love to see what it was like. And that's a very big part of this. Talking about a film comes out in 1939 based on a book from 1900. Okay, and again, you got to think about the transformation of a story from book to the big screen, Gar. And I think MGM, they accomplished that because, first of all, no matter what it was like in the silent era films, I mean, all throughout the movie, they created a fantasy world. And see, watching The Wizard of Oz last night, it did not even matter. Okay, I'm not sitting there thinking, oh, there's no way in hell. There's no that this could ever happen. There's no such yellow brick road. This is, BS. I'm thinking about, that's a world I wish I could visit. That's a world I wish did exist. It's one of those films you go, you don't even care if it could really happen or not. You're just blown away. You're entertained. You're enjoying it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there's the movie. Was had a lot of things that were groundbreaking at the time.
Yeah.
Good groundbreaking and bad groundbreaking at the time.
Sure.
Say, for example, the makeup, and the outfits that were being used by the Cowardly Lion and
the Scarecrow,
and the Tin Man and the Scarecrow. Scarecrow wasn't dangerous to the actor, but that the makeup on the Tin Man, was highly toxic. It was so toxic that it put, the original Tin Man, who was supposed to be Buddy Epson.
Oh, wow.
Buddy Epson was famous as Jed Clampett.
Yeah. That's where. Yeah, sure.
But the original Tin Man was supposed to be him, Buddy Epson.
Wow.
But he got so sick from that makeup that he was hospitalized for a long time.
Oh, wow.
And so long that he lost the part.
Wow.
They couldn't, wait that long for him to recover. They couldn't just stop production on the movie, for that long.
Wow.
And then the actor that replaced him, Haley, now he also, they did some things to protect him.
Sure.
From the makeup that they didn't do because they didn't know.
They didn't know, before.
How a human being was going to react to that aluminum powder being put on your skin.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
That's what happened. It was aluminum powder, and it was the human reaction to that.
Wow.
Well, with Haley, they put like a coat of something protective on his skin before they put that on him to turn him silver.
Well, again, just a learning process for that.
But it didn't protect him all the way because some of it got in his eye, and he got a really bad eye infection. I mean, a really bad. It took him a week to get over that eye infection.
Wow, I mean, talk about the learning process. I mean,
so
wow.
That's what I'm saying. Groundbreaking good and groundbreaking bad. Because there were things that they were learning on the stage. In order to use Technicolor at that time, the stages had to be lit so brightly that it turned the temperature on the stage to over 100 degrees.
Oh, yeah.
So the actors and the actresses were having to do all of the different things that they were doing in like really super hot temperatures.
Oh, wow, I can imagine.
Another thing, that was going on that was groundbreaking at that time. And then, what else? There was the Technicolor, there was and then there was the 100-pound lion outfit that the Cowardly Lion had to wear
wow.
on stage. The thing weighed 100 pounds. Yeah. He's sweating like a pig because it's over 100 degrees.
Wow. Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
These are all things that the actors and the actresses had to go through to make the movie. Now, we watched the movie and we have no idea how much they are actually having to endure to make the movie, because we get to see the nice, shiny, polished product.
After the fact, yeah.
Yeah, but there was a lot of suffering that was going on, and there was a lot of really uncomfortable environments that were on that stage during that time when they were making the movie. And there's another thing about during that time period, in order for a movie to win an Oscar, it really had to be, worthy of an Oscar.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that, what was worthy of an Oscar, the bar level,
was high.
Was extremely high. So movies had to be extremely successful. It had to have incredible performances for the actors and the actresses to win Oscars. It was, the bar was set so high back in the late 1930s. And nowadays I see movies where a movie wins the Oscar. And you're going, what the hell, that movie? What?
I've never even heard of it.
You know what I mean? It's just like, it's like a completely, the bar has been lowered like radically.
Yeah, it really has.
Compared to what it used to be back in the late 1930s. I mean, the Oscar event, just the event alone was a huge, powerful event. And nowadays, even that, it's just becoming just like another awards show. And there's so many award shows now that it's become homogenized.
Yeah,
But back in the late 1930s, when Wizard of Oz was being made, it was being made during a time where that bar was like
extremely
really
high.
Super high.
Yeah. Here's another interesting fact, Gar. Let's talk a little bit about the cast. Now, interestingly enough, I learned that both Shirley Temple and Deanna Durbin were considered for the role of Dorothy, but of course Judy Garland won the part because the folks in MGM felt she had a better singing voice. They felt.
Oh yeah, she had the pipes.
Yeah, she could cover the material. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't mean to cut you off, but
yeah.
man, you just really changed it onto a really good one here.
Yeah, yeah.
Because the truth of the matter is Shirley Temple could sing.
But
I was around and I was watching Shirley Temple movies when I was a kid.
So
they
know.
They were even popular when I was a kid.
Yeah, yeah.
And Shirley Temple's style of singing was cute. You see what I'm saying?
Sure.
Oh, look at that. Oh, it's so cute. That little cute girl singing.
Yeah.
And it's such a cute song. It was all about cute.
Yeah.
And the difference between Shirley Temple, because she was way more popular than Judy Garland at that time.
Yeah.
She was like, at the top of the echelon. And Judy Garland was way down here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Shirley Temple was extremely popular back in the late 1930s.
Oh, sure.
And she lost out to Judy Garland because Judy Garland had the pipes.
Yeah. And even though Judy Garland had a career of her own at the time, it's very it's very kind of fun to look at. This is the film that she's most remembered for. And I was reading kind of along the same lines as you, Gar, that for whatever reason, this was a very different world back in 1939. I was reading stuff I couldn't really believe, but they were worried about that this is Judy Garland, that her chest was too big, so they had to kind of cover it up so it didn't show so much. And cast members and crew members were kind of gawking at her chest and pointing and making lewd comments.
The truth of the matter is that she was 16 years old. She was butting into a woman at that time.
There you go, yeah.
And she was playing the character of an 11-year-old.
Yeah.
So it's only natural that they're going to do those things. In fact, she had to wear a super tight corset to try to help to, give her more of a visualization of being a younger child than she was.
Yeah.
And it is the truth of the matter. She was a 16-year-old girl that was playing the character of an 11-year-old.
Yeah. Oh wow. That's. Oh wow. I didn't realize that. I read something about she played a role of a teenager, but okay. That kind of explains that. But I was also reading, because she died of, she was addicted to drugs and stuff, and she became known for that, like in her later on in her career in her life, and sadly, for what I was reading, that a lot of the producers and people behind the scenes were giving her uppers and downers also because they were concerned that her weight was going up. They wanted her to lose weight, and that, from what I was reading, that helped her get addicted to the stuff.
Well, she, you can take it to the bank that you can hang her addiction on MGM.
Yeah, that's and again, very different world.
They are the entity that is responsible for her becoming addicted.
Yes.
Because they were the ones that were making it available to her, and they were giving her the reasons, which were, by today's standards, are now those reasons are against the law to protect the innocent. But there were no laws.
There were no
in the late 1930s.
There were no standards.
Society really didn't know anything about addictive drugs. All of that stuff was in its infancy, and we know so much more
now
about all of that stuff nowadays. But the truth of the matter was there was a lot of that stuff that was going back and forth at that time, and the studio, of course, all they care about is their profit margins and the success of their projects.
Yeah, and again,
so as far as they're concerned, then give her the uppers so she loses the weight, and we can make more money off of her. All of that. You see what I'm saying?
Sure. And that's why I brought it up.
Because what she went through, and when you take a look at her life and how her life turned out, she died at 47.
Wow, so tragic. Yeah.
Freaking 7 years old.
Yeah.
That, to me,
it's tragic.
At my stage where I am at in my life, I'm a lot older than 47.
Oh, sure.
To me, that's young.
Yeah.
That's really super young, and she died way before she should have.
And Gar.
And it all is the responsibility of MGM. They are the ones that did it to her.
Yeah, and she's not. I'm sure she's not the only one, because Gar.
No, you're 100% right about that. I do apologize. I just cut you off again, and it's rude.
No, you're not. You're not rude.
100% right. She is just one of a case of many actors and actresses that were treated exactly the same way.
No, Gar, my friend, you're not rude. Let me tell you, I think the point here that we're both trying to make is we struck a nerve, because it's funny, like in so many of these episodes, you and I will like come across something like this, and we will be thinking the same thing, and again, like people got to realize that you and I do not like get together and meet and plan the shows out. We talk about the day we do the episodes, and it's kind of funny to realize as we're recording the show today, you and I kind of struck the same nerve. We were thinking the same thing. The studio is the one to blame for her lifelong addiction. I dare say, had she never made this film, maybe she never would have become addicted. Who knows? It could have been on the set of another movie set. But we also know, Gar, the entertainment industry, including the music industry, we've heard stories from some of our favorite musicians over the years, how the record company used to have the drugs waiting for the band at the studio when they would go and record. It's such a different world that now record companies and movie companies, they drug test people, and you'll get fired if they find out you're doing drugs, or you'll have to go to rehab or do something if you want to keep the role. But I mean, it was a very different world back then.
Well, there is a stark difference between the Judy Garland story with the studios and the musicians with the record companies. The truth of the matter is the musicians were doing those same drugs before they.
Anyways, they just had more access to it.
Contract. It's just once they got that record contract, they didn't. It just became supplied to them whenever they wanted it. It was there.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, they were already addicted to it, but like you said, the supply just increased, and they didn't have to pay for it any longer.
Yes. So it was a little bit of a different type of dynamic.
Yeah.
Where I doubt very much that Judy Garland was addicted to painkillers and all the things that she became addicted to. Before she made that movie, and the speculation has definitely legs underneath it, that she probably became addicted to those drugs while making a Wizard of Oz.
Sure.
It's hot. I can't. Nobody can say for sure because nobody's got any proof.
But
the speculation is pretty strong.
Yeah, but they lit the fire for the temptation, we can say, I guess. And again, let's talk about the cast, Gar, because I did the research for today's episode before watching the movie last night, a couple days before. And I never really noticed this before, but another thing I noticed in watching the film last night is, some of the main stars, like primarily like the one that played the Tin Man, the Scarecrow, but Caroline Line, they actually were cast into two parts, each of these guys, as the farmhands, like at the beginning and the end of a film. And you don't even realize unless you did the research, like me and you, and we find this stuff out. But you realize after doing that, those are the same guys at the beginning of the film that played the three main characters throughout the movie. And if you don't know that, you might just not even notice. But I'm assuming that was done maybe kind of as a little bit of trickery to see if people would notice. A little fun aspect of the film. Also, probably to save money. Hey, you know what? Instead of hiring somebody else to play the farmhands, we'll just have these guys do it. And that was another fun aspect of the film.
Well, it's like what's that guy that was driving the carriage in Oz with the horse of a different color. He was one of those actors. He did like 5 different roles.
Yes,
Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
He didn't just do one and then do another. He did 5 different roles.
Yeah.
And, now they're all bit parts. But it is kind of a fun fact. That they did that, and and I guess I would imagine that it probably did save the studio money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's a good reason to do it. So Ray Bolger, he played the roles of Hunk the farmhand and the Scarecrow. Now, again, in doing the research, I didn't know too much about these actors except if they were in the Wizard of Oz, and so I was doing a little research on Ray Bolger, and before the Wizard of Oz, he was not only part of the silent film era, but he was involved. He was more of a vaudevillian actor, and then I think it was saying after the Wizard of Oz, he had like some kind of a show, like a vaudeville show on TV of some kind, and so he done other things, but the Wizard of Oz remained the thing he's remembered most for, and you could see why. And then Bert Lohr, he played Zeke the farmhand, and also, of course, the Cowardly Lion. Again, the Wizard of Oz is the main thing that he's remembered for. He did some other bit parts, but nothing huge. And Jack Haley, as you mentioned, he played Hickory the farmhand, and of course the Tin Man. Now let's talk about all these characters. Let me ask you, the character of the Scarecrow. What did you think of him?
I loved him.
Yeah.
As a child, the way the way that Ray Bolger did it and everything, and how he was so fluid, and I mean, he really did a phenomenally fantastic job in really creating the visual of him actually being the Scarecrow. And
what's interesting is he's the one supposedly, but doesn't have a brain.
Originally the Tin Man.
No, but but also the Scarecrow is a character that supposedly doesn't have a brain, yet he seems very intelligent. Every time he says something, and of course I love the song. I love the part where he sings, "If I only had a brain," And again, that's another aspect of the Wizard of Oz. And as we explained, that had a lot to do with why Judy Garland ended up with the role instead of Shirley Temple or Deanna Durbin, because she had an ability to sing this type of music much more than those other actresses. And I was reading that originally, when they originally screened the film, the studio decided to remove the Somewhere Over the Rainbow song in the film, but they ended up putting it back, and luckily because they found that people really loved that song. People really, that's like one of their favorite scenes throughout the film, and they almost left it out. Could you imagine?
Well, it just shows you that when anything is in production before it ever gets released, no one truly really knows whether it's going to be successful or not.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, when you're making it, you really don't know which element is going to be that element that the public really latches onto.
Yeah.
It's very similar to a musician writing a hit song, because the crucial element to a song becoming a hit is its catchiness.
Yeah.
And catchiness doesn't have one formula. in writing a song. Catchiness can be in many different elements of the song. Most people associate the catchiness with the song's chorus.
The hook,
The part that you repeat.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That part that, when people, and then it comes to this part where everybody sings that part together. That is called the chorus.
Yeah.
And usually the chorus is used for that hook. But, sometimes the hook is not the chorus. Sometimes the hook is just a melody.
Yeah.
An actual melody. Or the hook can be, a group of people, yelling out one word.
Yeah.
There are many shapes and forms to that hook. So there is, because there is no single formula to coming up with a hook. That's why it makes it so hard to come up with catchy songs, because in reality, when a band is writing those songs and then they go into the studio and they record those songs, that band has no idea which one of those songs is going to be embraced by the public. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And the band has no idea as to what degree the public will embrace it.
Yeah.
They have no idea until it's actually released, and then now you get to see where the chips fall, because the public will just take its organic, approach to it, and then, whatever they wind up gravitating towards becomes that hit. On that record. And it's exactly the same with movies.
Oh, sure.
Nobody knows, what part of it is going to be that part that people latch onto. And the indication that they were going to, cut somewhere beyond the rainbow, that song just shows you right there that they were right in the middle of all of this and not really knowing, what the elements are that the public's really going to latch onto. But we get to look back now, and we get to see how much the public really gravitated to that song.
Yeah. And Gar, I know you've shared with us in a few of the past episodes, you're not a big fan of like musical movies, and I don't know if it's really musical, but it's a big part of this film. And let me ask you though, like I know oftentimes when I go see a movie and there's a hit song, or it's a musical or something like Chicago, a lot of times the people in the audience in the theater, they'll start singing along. Now as this film has become part of your family tradition around every November, is that something you've experienced as you watch a film, that other people that you might be watching the film with just start singing these songs as they play throughout the movie?
Well, the movie means something different to everyone.
Yeah, and that's the whole point here. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of enjoy, and that's the reason why we call this art.
Yeah.
It's a lot of people don't understand what art is. Art is a hard thing to define. But the truth of the matter is what do they refer to artists or the actors and actresses as? They refer to them as artists.
That's true. And Gar?
And the same thing with musicians.
Yeah.
When they're referring, say in a contract, when a musicians, they are referring to me when they say artist in the contract.
Sure.
You see what I'm saying?
Sure.
So and because what I do is not painting or not associate with art, but art art is where you create something from nothing, where it never existed before.
Gar.
And you are creating it. Say, for example, as a musician, when you are writing a song, that piece of paper is a blank piece of paper when you started.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Sure.
And now what you are putting on that piece of paper is your art.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? When you're writing those lyrics or you're writing that music, when you're doing that, you are actually creating something from nothing. It never existed. And that, to me, is the true definition of an artist. And that's why, as an actor, you refer to them as an artist.
Sure.
A director, you refer to them as an artist. A musician, you refer to them as an artist. And these are all outside of what we traditionally consider art, because in normal mainstream in the world, thinks of art. Oh, I'm going to go to a museum and I'm going to see a bunch of pictures.
Yeah, Gar. Now you've just given us the definition of what it means to be an artist, what art is, but I'm going to sum everything you just set up in one word: interpretation. Because think about this. Okay, now, like I said at the top of this, The Wizard of Oz is a movie came out in 1939, based on a book from 1900. So it's in just what we've been talking about today. It's all about interpretation. The guy that originally wrote the book, okay, he comes up with the original idea, the story, the concept, the characters. Then 39 years later, it is turned into a movie. They get these actors that kind of bring the book, the story, to life through this movie. Judy Garland performs the songs throughout the film. It brings
interpretation
of the fans, how they reacted. Now again,
their interpretation.
People write books and they turn movies into it, or what? It's there. Even you on stage performing Guns N' Roses songs with your band Appetite for Destruction. It's your interpretation, and it does. You don't have to set. But you told me you put so much homework into honing your craft and doing your best to look and sound like Axl Rose, that people are convinced that this is much more than just some guy in his garage. You have really done your homework. You've really studied. This is your interpretation.
Yes, and at the fear of getting off topic, I just have to bring up something since you just said that, because we have been doing these interviews for many years now.
At least 4 years.
And for all of those years, off and on in our conversations has always come up about me and how important it is for me to sound like him. And for all of those years, I have always been saying that, yes, I constantly get feedback from people that, that I do a great job and everything like that. But in my ears and for me, all I ever see or hear are the areas where I'm falling short, and the areas that can be improved to make it even more authentic.
Oh, sure.
And and recently I just brought up that I had made a breakthrough.
Yeah.
In what I'm doing to be able to sound even more like Axl. And the problem with that is it's great. Pat on the back, you made a breakthrough.
Yeah.
But the problem with that is there's a huge difference between making that breakthrough and bringing it to the stage where now you're performing that breakthrough in front of audiences.
Yeah.
And so I remember it's a few months ago that I brought this up in an interview, and I did a show in out by Fresno, and I tried utilizing the breakthrough, and it wasn't working.
Oh wow!
And I say halfway through the show, I had to revert back to what I was doing previous, which was good enough.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I was very disappointed with that. Because I was trying to use it in a live situation, and it just was not working.
But Gar, that's important.
So I was really disappointed, right?
Yeah.
And I really never taught. Well, I just a week ago I did a show, the Halloween show.
Yeah.
2 weeks ago I did the Halloween show over at the House of Blues in Las Vegas.
Sure.
And I unveiled it, and I worked on it, and I used it for that last show, and finally it worked.
Way to go, Gar. I mean,
I have to say that there's another thing about that Las Vegas show, is because the bulk of the audience that was there had never seen my band before.
Wow.
And when I came out on the stage and I first started performing, I could see in the audience's eyes the skepticism.
Wow.
I could see it in their eyes. Is this guy going to be able to, sound like Axl? Or is it going to be a wah?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or is it just going to be okay?
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And by the time I got halfway through the show, I could see in their eyes that that breakthrough was working, and they were eating it up. And according to everyone in that audience, basically the feedback that I got, I sounded exactly like him. I was doing things that other singers cannot do. And that's the reason why I say that, doing Axl is the hardest thing, the hardest challenge I have ever put on myself. It has been extremely difficult to do what he does. The wheezing thing that he does, the raspy thing, where he does the rasp, being able to get the rasp on the high notes, and just being able to do all these different elements, because he has a lot of elements to his voice that if you just do one, you're just doing one. In order to really sound like him, you have to be doing all of the elements. And that last breakthrough was a huge one that really, now it's encompassing all of the aspects of what he does. You know what I mean? It's eliminating any weak spots.
Congratulations, my friend.
I just have to say that by the end of the show, I could see in that audience that the work that I had put, all those, months that I had put in working on it and doing all of this, and it really, it took a lot of months of work to finally get to that point where I got the breakthrough. But I finally got it where I could actually do the breakthrough in front of audiences.
That's a difference between you and so many other singers, Gar. You do your homework, you put in the work and all that and the effort. A lot of people get complacent in what they do. I got it down. I don't need to worry about it anymore. I'll just wait till the day of a show. I don't even need to rehearse. So that's, I think, why you're able to reach those kind of breakthroughs. Now, before we...
the only thing I can say is if anybody comes to my show from here on out, there is going to be no reason for anyone to be disappointed. Ever.
I'm pretty sure about that. And, Gar, before we wrap it up for today, I also wanted to bring up another one of the key actors throughout the film was Billy Burke, who played the part of Glinda, the Good Witch. Now, what I loved about this is, I think before The Wizard of Oz, most people, when they think of the witch, they think of something ugly and creepy. Ugly and creepy. This was the first time I had seen a beautiful witch, and she was I was like, wow, why couldn't I run into a witch that looked like that,
Well, and honestly, before this movie, I don't think there had ever been a witch that had been portrayed that way.
Yeah.
Up until Wizard of Oz, witches had always been ugly, creepy, wart on the nose. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and of course, that was the Wicked Witch in this movie too. And of course, she's the one that dies and is evil, and almost like when she gets killed, everybody's kind of cheering it on, which was kind of an interesting aspect of this fantasy film. And Gar, before we really wrap it up, we can't wrap it up without, of course, talking about the wizard. I love the part of a wizard. I mean, there's a part where they go to Oz and they finally get in to see the wizard, and just this image appears, like this great powerful image, not even a human being, just like this big head appears, and you're like all encompassed and like just intrigued on what the hell this wizard is. And
he's bigger than life.
He's got this huge voice, and I love how he tells him, "Oh, you're not just going to come here and ask her. I'm not just going to hand it to you. You got to earn it. Like you go and get me the Wicked Witch's a broom, And then I love the total unveiling that they find this big, larger than life wizard is really this old man behind the curtain, like almost.
Yeah, just a big farce.
Yeah. And that was the funnest part of the movie when you realize, oh, okay.
Well, and I remember as a child, seeing that his big face and the booming voice and all that stuff.
Yeah.
As a child, it looked bigger than life, and also understand that back in the day when I was a child watching this on TV, the largest TVs were 25-inch.
Yeah.
That was considered the big screen at that time.
Yeah. Now you got 65, 70.
You are as a child, and you're watching this on TV on a 25-inch screen, and yet it still affected you that it was bigger than life.
Yeah. I mean, even watching it last night, that's how it seemed. And of course, I love the way the movie ends with they each kind of get what they came for. Dorothy gets home, and then of course the ruby slippers. You just tap them 3 times and say, take me back home or whatever. But those ruby slippers a few years ago in one of these celebrity auctions sold for millions of dollars. Can you imagine that?
Well, it was a remake. Those were actually a remake of the ruby slippers that were made out of rubies.
Yeah, you can imagine that though. And so I love the part where the Tin Man doesn't really get a heart, but he gets a heart-shaped clock, and oh my God, it ticks just like a heart. And then the Scarecrow, he didn't get a brain, but he got a PhD, and he gave him all these nice little lectures. Of course, the Lion gets his badge of courage. I mean, all through the film, it was full of these metaphors. Well, not really a heart, but I'll give you something that's shaped like a heart. I just love that aspect of it.
And as a child, the way I digested it when he gave him that heart clock thing, it was as if he gave him a heart.
Yeah.
The way I mentally digested that as a child was even though it was metaphoric and everything like that, it to me it was an equivalent.
Yeah, it made it seem, especially as a child, that okay, dreams can come true, and maybe not exactly the way you dreamed it, but it's possible. Dreams are possible, which I thought was a beautiful message. And Gar, this has been so much fun doing this. I just want to thank you and tell people that, and everybody, happy Thanksgiving, happy holidays. I'm going to go away for about 3 weeks, but when I return, Gar and I, for the next episode, we're gonna get into Christmas now. We're gonna talk about the original How the Grinch Stole Christmas. I'm of course talking about the animated version. That's gonna be so much fun, Gar. So thanks for doing this, Gar.
Oh man, who didn't grow up watching the original Grinch?
I know I did.
Everybody's seen it.
Yeah. Okay, Gar.
Oh my God.
Hold on a minute, Gar. Thanks,
Talk
buddy.
to you later, brother.
So, Gar, hey, that was fun. Yeah.